Good afternoon. Today is the 12th of August and it's time for yet another very vague, slightly disappointing and otherwise not very interesting vlog. Those of you who are channel members, let's turn that off, shall we? Those of you who are channel members on the 45 V6 and Seat Toledo tiers will see this particular video pretty much when it goes live. The rest of you, I'm afraid, are going to have to wait until probably at some point next month. Most of you think that's a merciful thing. You don't have to hear me drone on any more than necessary. So today, this is number, I think it's 55. I can't believe how many of these we do. We're going to be talking about something that happened 5 years ago, actually 5 years ago yesterday, which is when my lady wife and I got married. Don't worry, I will spare most of you the rather tedious details of that sort of stuff if you're not interested. What I'm more sort of talking about really is actually the cars that we had, the vehicles we had at the wedding. This was at the time where we had exactly the same cars that we had at the start of the channel, which was just under 4 years ago. And so my mother had a Mercedes that was 6 weeks old, I think. I had the Seat Toledo, which was even newer than that. I think it was under a month old when I actually got married. And we had the MG. We actually used, to some extent, those 3 cars. My mother drove my sister and my uncle in the Mercedes for the wedding. I actually drove to the church in the MG, although one of my friends who was also in children at the time very kindly parked it outside the place where we were staying the night. And then we got taken away from the event in the Toledo. Actually, by that stage it was dark, and driving around in a 1947 Bentley Mark 6 Special, which was the main wedding car that we had. That's not really the best thing to be driving around at night, particularly after you've had 1 or 2 drinks. In fact, you shouldn't be driving at all after having had 1 or 2 drinks. So many years ago, a friend of mine had a father who had some work done on a Mark 6 Bentley that he bought at an auction at some point. This is a long time ago. This is sort of early to mid 90s. And so his father had some work done on this Mark 6 Bentley. It was pretty rotten. There wasn't really much of it left. It was just a standard sort of Mark 6 Bentley, Chester plates, because crew where Bentleys were made for a long time. I think Bentleys are still made there, to be honest. Is in the Chester registration district. So he decided to have this thing rebodied. He was a huge motoring enthusiast, and at some point we might feature some of the cars that he used to own on the channel. I don't know if you'd be interested in seeing some of those. I'll have to ask my friends who have them, but yeah, so he wanted this special bodied Mark 6 Bentley prepared, and he had it done. Unfortunately, he passed away in a motoring accident in France in the mid-90s, and the special body that he commissioned for this Mark 6 Bentley, he never actually saw it. He saw images of it, and I think he saw some of the work being done on it, but he never saw the car completed, which is a real shame. Fortunately, his sons, my friends Jim and Dave, they actually did know how to drive in a very young age. They're both younger than me. The first driving experience that they had was in a 1935 Singer Le Mans, which is, well, it's interesting, shall we say. And so they knew how to drive this thing. I was able to have a go on it at a very young age. I think I was 17 years old, which would be just at the end of the 90s, when Their mother said, "Do you want to go in it?" And there was some private land that I could have a go at it on. And I think that's the first car I ever drove, was that Mark 6 Bentley Special. It's got a 6.75 litre Rolls-Royce V8. I think it's either 3 or 4 speed automatic gearbox. I think it's a GM unit in that. Jaguar steering column, Jaguar gear lever. There's not much room in it. I mean, like, my lady wife's wedding dress barely fitted in this thing, and it's a bit of a handful. It's supposed to have power steering, but it doesn't seem to really. You have to leap over the side if you're a driver because there's no door. You just do it like you used to do in the sort of 20s, 30s Bentleys. If you've seen the Avengers, you'll have seen Patrick McNee as John Steed or his stunt double jumping over the side of the Bentley to get in many times. And that's the way that you do it as a gentleman. The lady, of course, has a door, although the door's very small. It's not the most space-efficient car, not the most economical car. It's got 2 fuel tanks. I think Jim said it does about 9 miles per gallon. He had it at his wedding as well, the year before we got married, and it still works. It's still got it. It's very long, so if you come out of junctions, it's like your sort of nose is very vulnerable. It can be chopped off at any time, which it's not great really. The biggest problem though came when I was sitting helping run a course in central London a few weeks before the wedding, and Jim phoned me and said, "I'm afraid we've had a problem with Special. The half shaft come off at the back." And I think his brother was driving it, as Dave. Dave's a very enthusiastic driver. They're both very enthusiastic drivers. I mean, you know, their father actually was racing a vintage Bugatti when he passed away, so they're very enthusiastic drivers. And he took it down to a place in New Forest to have it repaired, have a half shaft repaired. But I was told in no uncertain terms, having you know, about to go on a little test drive just to make sure I was still able to drive it. It was a long time since I'd driven it. Dear me, probably like 15 years, probably more. But I was still okay with it. And I was told by the specialist who'd repaired it, do not, under any circumstances, put your foot down when you're coming out of a junction and go around a corner. Do not accelerate hard. I was thinking, I've got enough things to sort of worry about on my wedding day than actually this car breaking down on me, the half shaft going and being stuck out of a junction and possibly being sideswiped by somebody else. There's not very much crash protection in the Mark 6 Bentley Special. So that was interesting. I drove it back from New Forest to where Jim was keeping it, and that was okay, apart from me going deaf in one ear because of how high it revved and having no idea if the indicator was still on because the light was very dim, but also you couldn't really hear the ticking above the extraordinary noise of the engine. There is a hood, but like it's very hard to put up, and I don't think anyone ever managed it, so you couldn't really park it anywhere overnight and put it on when you were driving down the motorway. So Lloyd Vehicle Consulting stickers, t-shirts and mugs are available by clicking the link to the Google form in the video description below. So there we go. So that was okay. I drove it back. Jim then brought it over to the church. I was to drive down to our ring reception, having finished the wedding. The other 2 cars we had were a 1955 Bentley R-Type 5-seater convertible, which was a beautiful shade of cream and bronze. It was beautiful. We managed to hire that from a local place in Surrey. Absolutely beautiful. 2 Bentleys, both from the same kind of chassis, but very different prospects. One 2-seater boat tail, special body, one standard bodied R-Type with 5 seats. But bridal car, very good. If I have some photographs somewhere of this, I will put them in. If you're interested in this kind of stuff, I mean, maybe you're not, maybe it's not really your sort of thing. The last thing that we had was a a 1961 Harrington Cavalier coach. There's a company, I think it's called Southdown Motor Services, and you could hire this period coach, and it was brilliant. It was in this old livery that they used to use in the 60s, sort of green and white livery. So it looked quite good, you know. Those were the sort of colours that we were sort of going for, I think. My lady wife decided those are what we were having. And it worked really, really well. Everything sort of worked together. And I drove down to the reception, waiting for the bridal car to sort of get there, and also the coach. The coach eventually came down. A lot of people we knew didn't drive, and so it was quite handy. The sort of kind of train journey there wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad between the two of them, but it was just a bit easier with the people who were not familiar with the area. So we got there ahead of the bridal car. That had then arrived, that was fine, and the coach. And when I backed it into the space outside the reception venue, Jim then turned up, and I threw the key to Jim and said, "Here you go, I didn't die." And I remember just being on the way down there, once at traffic lights, just everybody looking at us, bright red open top Bentley, and driving my lady wife in an enormous wedding dress. We just managed to get inside the thing, and it was a very surreal day. There was one particular occasion where I thought, well, I went round the corner too quickly and put my foot down too much, and I was going to break the half shaft, but I didn't. I got there, and Jim managed to drive it back the next day, and unfortunately the half shaft came off just before fleet services on the M3, which yeah, that wasn't great. But to be honest, it could have been worse, couldn't it? It could have happened. You know, way before that when I was driving it. So we were sort of blessed there. So a very significant kind of day. My lady wife has never driven any of this stuff. I don't think she'll probably want to drive that special. It does require a lot of planning, because the brakes are either on or off. The turning circle's terrible, and you can't really go above 50 because you just go deaf. So there we go. Coming out of junctions, yeah, with that bonnet. That's interesting too. But it is an automatic, so that's one thing. It is like a very big go-kart. But that's it really, viewers. Thank you ever so much indeed once again for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, leave a comment below. And if maybe you want to see this Mark 6 special on the channel at some stage, then let me know in the comment section, and I'll ask Jim and Dave, and we'll see if we can go for a little spin in it and terrify ourselves in the process. Thank you ever so much indeed once again.